3 a.m., the dead of night in Harlem, 1932. The air is thick, humid. It smells like garbage, spilled gin, and fear. Rain slicks the cobblestones of a narrow alley off 125th Street. It's a dead end, a trap. And standing in the deepest shadow, wearing a cashmere coat that costs more than a police captain's yearly salary, is Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson. He isn't running. He's waiting. He lights a cigarette. The flame flickers, illuminating his face, calm, stone-faced. The smoke curls up, vanishing into the darkness. Then the sound of heavy boots, not one pair. 6. The metallic click of 6 distinct hammers pulling back on 6 police-issue revolvers. These aren't just any cops. They're the cleaners. Dirty badge, hire guns paid by Dutch Schultz to erase problems, and tonight Bumpy Johnson is the problem. They block the only exit. The lead officer, a man with a scar running through his eyebrow and liquor on his breath, steps forward. He smiles. It's a nasty, confident grin. He tells Bumpy it's over. No court. No judge. Just a dark alley and a closed casket. The officer raises his weapon, aiming straight for the center of Bumpy's forehead. Bumpy doesn't flinch. He doesn't beg. He takes a long drag of the cigarette, exhaling a perfect gray cloud. He looks at the 6 barrels pointed at his chest. Then he checks his watch. He looks up and whispers one word. Finally, the lead cop's finger tightens on the trigger. The silence stretches. It screams. A single drop of rain hits a trash can lid loud as a gunshot, but the shot never comes. Instead, the darkness behind the cops begins to move. Bumpy smiles, and that's when the screaming starts. To understand why 6 armed men walked into that alley expecting a slaughter and found a nightmare, you have to look at the money, but more importantly, you have to look at the blood. The order came down from the Bronx. Arthur Dutch Schultz. The beer baron. A man who killed with the casual indifference of someone swatting a fly. Schultz wanted Harlem. He wanted the numbers racket, the policy game. It was a chaotic, beautiful ecosystem of pennies and nickels that built empires. Bumpy stood in the way. He was the gatekeeper, the queen's bishop on a chessboard made of asphalt and bone. But this wasn't just business. It was personal. The lead cop in that alley, Sergeant Miller, had a reason to take the job. It wasn't just the envelope of cash Schultz promised. It was debt. Gambling debts that were drowning him. Miller had a sick wife at home, lungs filled with fluid, coughing up blood into a handkerchief. He needed the money to send her upstate for clean air. Desperation makes men dangerous. It makes them blind. Miller saw Bumpy Johnson as a paycheck. He saw a solution to his suffering. He didn't see the man. He didn't see the predator. He underestimated the sheer gravitational pull of Bumpy's will. Bumpy knew about the wife. He knew about the debt. He knew Miller's shift schedule, his favorite bar, and the brand of whiskey he drank to numb the shame. That was the difference. Schultz fought for territory. Miller fought for survival. But Bumpy was fighting for dignity, for the right to exist without bowing his head to a man who wouldn't even drink from the same water fountain. They called him the Professor for a reason. While other gangsters were buying flashy cars and louder suits, Bumpy was buying books. He sat in the back of the Lenox Lounge, a glass of cognac untouched on the table, reading Nietzsche, reading Sun Tzu. He understood that violence was just the final punctuation in a sentence written long before the trigger was pulled. He didn't need an army of soldiers on the street corners. He had something better. He had the invisible people. The doorman at the Ritz, who overheard the mayor's whispers. The shoeshine boy buffing the shoes of a corrupt judge. The janitor emptying the trash at the police precinct. Bumpy paid them, he fed them, he respected them, and in return, they gave him the most valuable currency in the world, information. He knew the hit was coming 3 days before Sergeant Miller even loaded his gun. He knew the time. He knew the alley. He spent those 3 days preparing. He wasn't relying on luck. Luck is for fools and dead men. He was calculating angles. He was measuring the acoustics of the alleyway. He was planting seeds. He let rumors slip that he would be alone, vulnerable, unarmed. He baited the trap with his own life. He played the long game. He understood that to destroy a monster like Dutch Schultz, you couldn't just shoot him. You had to dismantle his belief in his own power. You had to make his enforcers terrified of the dark. Bumpy wasn't just a gangster. He was a psychologist with a switchblade. Harlem in the 30s wasn't just a place, it was a frequency, a vibration. Walk down 133rd Street and you could feel it in the pavement. The frantic energy of jazz spilling out of Small's paradise. The trumpet blast that hit you in the chest like a physical blow. The smell of fried chicken, expensive perfume, and exhaust fumes. It was a world within a world. A city of exiles building a kingdom. The numbers racket was the heartbeat. For a washerwoman making $7 a week, putting a dime on a number was buying hope. It was a ticket to a dream where the rent was paid and the winter coat wasn't threadbare. But underneath the music and the hope, there was a jagged edge. A silence between the heartbeats. The rhythm of violence was always there, tapping its foot in the background. You learned to read the streets. When the corner boys disappeared, you went inside. When the music stopped, you ducked. The police were not protectors here. They were tourists with badges, invaders. When a squad car rolled down Lenox Avenue, conversations died, eyes lowered, muscles tensed. The tension was a wire pulled so tight it hummed. Bumpy Johnson lived on that wire. He walked it like a tightrope walker, perfectly balanced between the glamorous lights of the Cotton Club and the bloody gutters of the side streets. He was the king of this concrete jungle, and tonight the jungle was hungry. Back in the alley, the rain is harder now, a curtain of water. Sergeant Miller's finger is white on the trigger. He thinks he has won. He sees a dead man walking. Bumpy stares him down, the cigarette ash glowing orange. Miller squeezes. Click. The sound is small, but it echoes like thunder. A misfire? Miller panics. He pulls the trigger again. Click. And again. Click. The other 5 cops raise their guns. Confusion ripples through them. Panic is contagious. Bumpy hasn't moved. He takes the cigarette from his lips and drops it. It hisses as it hits the wet pavement. "You're firing pins," Bumpy says. His voice is low, smooth like gravel in honey. "They're on my desk." The realization hits Miller like a physical blow. The precinct armorer, the man who cleans and maintains the weapons, he has a gambling debt too. A debt Bumpy bought 2 days ago. The guns are useless. 6 pounds of cold steel, good only for bludgeoning. That's when the shadows detached themselves from the walls. Bumpy hadn't come alone. Above them, on the fire escapes, behind the dumpsters, in the darkness where the light didn't reach, 12 men, silent, armed with shotguns, not police issue, street sweepers. The hunters have become the prey. The 6 cops are surrounded. The dynamic shifts instantly. The arrogance drains from Miller's face, replaced by a primal animal terror. He drops the useless gun. It clatters on the stone. Bumpy steps forward. He closes the distance. He invades Miller's personal space. He smells the fear. It's sour. He reaches into his coat pocket. The cops flinch, expecting a weapon. Instead, Bumpy pulls out a thick envelope. He tucks it into Miller's breast pocket. "For your wife?" Bumpy says. Then he turns his back. He walks away. He doesn't run. He strolls. Behind him, the sound of 12 shotguns racking around into the chamber creates a mechanical symphony. Bumpy doesn't look back. He steps out of the alley and into the streetlights of 125th Street. Behind him, the alley erupts in a deafening roar of fire and lead. Bumpy walked out. The cops stayed. But not all of them. When the smoke cleared and the silence returned, 5 bodies lay in the rain. But Miller was alive, kneeling in the blood and the water, clutching the envelope to his chest. He was shaking, unharmed but destroyed. This was the code of Bumpy. Killing all of them would have been war. Leaving one alive, that was a message. A ghost story to carry back to Dutch Schultz. Miller was the vessel. He had to go back to his masters and tell them what happened. He had to tell them that their weapons were useless, that their plans were transparent, that Bumpy Johnson controlled the very air they breathed. The money in the envelope was the final twist of the knife. It wasn't a bribe. It was charity. It proved that Bumpy wasn't just more dangerous than them. He was better than them. He showed mercy where they would have shown none. It established a rule that would govern Harlem for decades. Respect is not given. It is not bought. It is taken. It is carved out of the bedrock with patience and intellect. Dutch Schultz went pale when he heard the story. He realized he wasn't fighting a thug. He was fighting a grandmaster. The body bags were just pawns removed from the board. The real victory was psychological. From that night on, every time a corrupt cop checked his weapon, his hand shook. They wondered if Bumpy had gotten to it first. Fear is a far better guard dog than loyalty. So, ask yourself this: if you were Miller, kneeling in that alley with your life in the hands of the man you came to kill, would you have taken the money? Was Bumpy Johnson a hero protecting his neighborhood from invaders, or was he a monster who just played the game better than the rest? History is written by the victors, but legends are written in the streets. Bumpy didn't just survive, he evolved. He became the man who would eventually mentor Malcolm X. He became the Godfather of Harlem. What would you do to protect your kingdom? How far would you go? Let me know in the comments. Would you have pulled the trigger, or would you have shaken his hand? Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because next time we're diving even deeper. We're looking at the man who finally made Bumpy blink. The Lucky Luciano connection. You do not want to miss it. Stay watching, stay safe, and remember, check your firing pin.